Yes, computer. So the plan for today. Oh, hello, Iris. The plan for today is to talk technical, and we're going to talk a few of the points where coaches agree and a few where they disagree. There are a lot of subjective, you must row this particular way, you must do this particular thing in rowing. There is also an entirely objective measurement of whether you are rowing well, which is, did your boat get to the finish line before the other one? So we're going to talk about some of the things that are definitely measurably better and some that are not. And we're going to do this with a set of slides that I have borrowed from the Darwin College women's coach, who I also row a double with, so reasonably easy borrow. Bear with me while I remember how you press the share screen button. Boom. Share. So, if you'll excuse the slightly wordy title, we're going to start out by looking at sequencing. So that is the legs, body, arms that you're all taught as part of the learn to row. Keep your arms straight, rock your body back, 1, 2, 3. There is a certain discussion about whether that is the only way to do the drive phase or not. And we'll go through that a little bit. I'm going to pick on a few more things like this as well. I'm going to pick on whether your hands should be fast away from the finish or slow. Cantabs has a very definite opinion on this. There's pros and cons. There's whether you should have loads of backsplash or not. Some coaches will tell you that is the one true way to show you have a proper catch. Some won't. We'll go through some ways you can actually measure, is this going better? So what we're aiming to do here is improve our technique, not necessarily have the one best technique. British rowing does have its recommended technique, but we're going to understand why we do it the way we do it. Too often you find coaches just shouting, sit up, sit up, sit up, and not really explaining why sitting up is a good thing, a bad thing, a completely irrelevant thing. As you go around, as you row with different crews, different clubs, as you hear different clubs on the river, you'll hear them making different calls, suggesting different things. If you do go and row with another club, chances are they'll ask you what on earth you're doing rowing in this way. This way you'll be able to explain not just, oh, Cantabs told me to, but you'll have an idea why. Also helps when you're inevitably debating, why aren't your hands moving faster? You can start to say, well, actually, it's not necessarily the best thing to make your hands faster, faster, faster at all costs. And I will explain the Cantabs house style as well. Obviously not the Darwin College Boat Club style, but they are, happily, they are quite similar. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to use these slides. I'll go, the style of learning rarely available in rowing. Specifically for you as single scullers, you have a great opportunity in those boats, which is that if you've always been told legs, then body, you can play around with what happens if you don't do that. You can try opening your body out right from the catch. You can try slow hands away at the finish. You can try all of these things that you've been told not to do and see if it works for you. One of the key reasons crew clubs have a house style is because it really helps to have everyone in a boat rowing the same way. You can make it work without, but that just makes the coach's life even more difficult than it already is. It's much easier if everyone in a crew and even in a club does the same thing. As a scholar, you can have a little bit of a play around with that and you can understand why that works and maybe what works for you. There is no guarantee that the Cantabs official style is the way you can go fastest. So you can have a play around so long as you understand what you're playing around with. We'll go on. As it says, this is borrowed from Noah, who borrowed it from Tom. I am inclined to believe Tom when he talks technical. You know, until I've got a crew to win Henley, then I will listen to the people who have. So, right up to national level, the national bodies have their technique. Here is how you will do rowing. They differ, sometimes quite greatly. They change over time. No one country seems to go reliably better than any other with their technique. Let's have a look at a few. This, you should all know the British rowing official technique. It is legs, body, arms. It has a drive phase. It has a recovery phase. You can see all of this through the British rowing website. French. So there is the recovery phase for the British rowers. There's the one for the French. You look at the curve on his back. It doesn't actually say it here. And you look at, but you can see very much how tall the British example rower is sitting. Those are not the same, clearly. And yet their national federations are picking them as an example. You can see how early the French rower is squaring here. You know, starting to square barely over the knees. The British rower is further forward, blades still flat. You'll have to trust me on that, the blades are still flat. So we have a difference. The Canadian rowers, again, this example, and this time they've drawn the example, it must be correct. This time the guy is sitting up reasonably tall, describing all manner of hands move smoothly away from the body. Okay, that one's not actually very specific, but the lower back is kept strong, the athlete sits tall. There are some things here that are pretty much, no one's ever going to tell you to wobble your lower back when you're rowing. There are some things we all agree on. There are some that we don't. What do you know? I jumped ahead. So you do want a strong posture. And the key is to use the big muscle groups, the legs, the glutes, and the upper back, the big lats muscles in the upper back. To transmit that power, we talk about rowing being a whole body sport. So you need all the other joints to be good. The shoulders, I'll bet the circuits have got you doing a fair bit of shoulder work, push-ups, side planks, anything that means that your shoulders can transmit all the power that comes out of your legs. If they can't, you're going to find lots of nasty little rotator cuffs that don't like to play. Long connection, this is key. We really want to be doing the work all the way through the stroke. There's very little margin in rowing shorter than we possibly can. We want to be accelerating the boat right the way through the drive. Right. Want to minimize the losses on the recovery. This is true. How to do that isn't specified here, but you definitely don't want to slow the boat down. Whether you're talking about letting it run or free speed, which is not a remotely well-defined phrase. But here's another key one. Well-timed movements with the crew. Well, as scullers, you're not going to care about that, but well-timed with the shell. You want to be doing the right things at the right time. You want to be getting your catches in at the right time as you're turning around the front end. You want to be releasing and stopping the drive at the right time. Again, not well defined what well time means, but we all agree that it should be it. Let's have a look at a few of the points that I've talked about already. So we talk about, Cantabs talks about the concurrent drive, the legs, then body, then arms. The Australians in particular do it entirely differently. they start opening their body out at the same time as they push with their legs. Pros and cons. Recovery hand speed at the finish. Cantabs does love fast hands away. The theory is that it helps you get higher rating, that your hands, that the hands naturally lead you up the slide. That's true, but it makes you rush the finish. The opposite is true the opposite way around. Motley have started doing a slow fast to persuade them to actually finish properly, or maybe something in the middle is a good idea. I talked about catch and backsplash. There's arguments about whether the arms are allowed to bend or not on the drive and how much. It's whether you should gear high or low. Many. Let's work our way through a few of these. This is the sequential concurrent. So the advantage of the sequential legs then body is that big drive of the hips is available at the back of the stroke when you've run out of legs, so you can transfer from legs to body. There's a certain, I'm not going into the hydrodynamics of it, but it is more efficient to put power on when the blade is parallel with the water. When the blade is perpendicular with the boat, I beg your pardon. So at the back of the stroke where you're more efficient, you've got the big glute muscles still to come into play fully. You can do that with a concurrent drive. It's harder. Also, on an entirely pragmatic note, it's really easy if you're doing legs then body to see if the crew's together. It's easier to coach. We like things that are easier to coach. By the way, do feel free to stop me at any point if I'm going too quickly, or tell me if this is all clear and obvious and known. No, I'm going too slowly. All right, at some point. $1 million question, which of these is better? Well, like I said, the Australians swear by their opening the body immediately. The Brits don't. The Canadians do something different all over again. What do we do down at the mere mortal levels? We find something we can actually measure, and we start talking about suspension. Right. At some point, I'm going to get to switch to a video. We'll keep talking. So you have to take a step back here and think about what you're actually trying to do with this legs and body and arms, or not. And you're trying to accelerate that boat through the whole stroke. How you do that, not so important, just so long as you have force on that handle all the way through. If you're all hanging off the handle, it's pretty much guaranteed that you're all going to accelerate the boat together. You can't not do. The physics doesn't really work like that. What you generally find, even amongst reasonably good college crews, is you don't have this magical suspension. So we're talking about what suspension is. So when you're in the boat and wanting to accelerate it forwards, it's very simple. You push with the feet and you hang your weight off the handle. There's not many things that can move in this system, at least the way I'm simplifying it now. And what that means is your weight comes off the seat. You might have done that in a racing start at some point, actually lost the seat. We like to do that in a more controlled manner. Okay? If you are hovering just above the seat all the way through the stroke, that means you have put as much force into that stroke as you possibly can. And this rower here with the boat photoshopped out from under her, she's national lottery funded. She's in British team kit from a few years ago. She can probably suspend. I'm going to give her the credit with that one. So she can get right the way to backstops before she finally falls in the water. She can keep her weight off the boat that has no longer existed. And if you'll forgive me going into horrible memories of GCSE physics, we can talk about the forces that are helping her here. Right? W here, wind direction. I like that one. You make the boat, you win the race by pushing in that direction. Right? You push the blades backwards to push the boat forwards there. You minimize the drag on the hull there. That's an important point that we'll get back to next. Am I going to get one more force arrow here? No, I'm not. Because her feet are lower than her handles there, she is pushing on the feet, pulling on the handles. There is a force pushing her upwards. Gravity obviously pushing back downwards. If you want to be really pedantic physics about it, rowing is gravity driven, but that's a bit much. Okay. Yeah, ignore that slide for a second. So this here is how we get as much push out of each stroke as possible. The only way to make the boat go faster than that is to take the rating up. If you're hanging off that seat, if you're hanging off the handle, if your weight is off the seat. Exactly how you do that, nowhere near as important as the whole crew doing that all the way through the stroke every time. And that's easy to tell. You will feel it when you get this. You will know when your bum is coming light on the seat because you'll start getting nervous about maybe the seat's going to skid away from under you. Also, you'll be pushing really, really hard. The British team do actually have a little Velcro tab on the back of their outfits these days, so they can attach the seat to their onesie, just in case they lose it. If Andy Triggs-Hodge is weighing 90 kilos and is hanging all of his body weight off the handle at the finish, that's a lot of force pushing in the wind direction. Right. Hang on. I keep skipping over that. So let's talk about another thing that is very objective and very clear as soon as the boat starts going quickly, and that is D here, the drag on the hull. We know about that. People have been designing boats to go through water for ages, and we know how drag works. Exactly how you minimize it, we can talk about. And if you'll forgive the, it's not really a detailed enough formula, but it's already a formula to scare off people who don't like formulas. Basically, the things you need to worry about are area of body, how much water you're displacing with your boat. You might think we can't change that. We sort of can. And the speed squared. That means going harder gets steadily harder. Double your speed, double the power, add just about 40% to your speed. If you learn how to double your power, please let me know. But you still won't go that much faster. So the things we really want to avoid here are putting more body in the water than we have to. That's the boat, not your body, although if you put your body in the water, you will slow down. We do that by very clever boat design, which is a bit beyond the scope of this course. But mostly, we do it by not bouncing the boat up and down in the water. Keep it as high and as consistent as we can. And we don't dunk the boat down and hugely increase that area. Okay? If you wish to get clever about it, note that that is area. Increase the depth that the boat sinks, even by a little bit, and you increase the area across the whole hull significantly. That's another squared thing. So bouncing up and down in the water does not gain you enough when you're high to balance out what you get when you're low. Right? Speed is the same thing. If you sprint and then coast, you don't gain anywhere enough out of the high speed, out of the high speed to make up what you lose on the low speed. We want consistent, smooth gliding boat to help the area in the water. And we want nice, consistent speed to help that bit. The coefficient is basically how well designed a boat do you have. You can't really influence that unless you've got a couple of £1,000 burning a hole in your back pocket. Is that everything I need there? Worth just throwing in here. When I talk about the varying speed, I do mean over the course of a race. There's no point starting crazy fast and finishing slow. It doesn't work like that. You lose way more than you gain. It does count within a stroke as well. The boat accelerates all the way through the drive phase, decelerates again as it slows down. If you increase your rating, all other things being equal, you get less slow down, less speed up. The peaks and troughs on the graph are less far apart. You will go faster. Right up until you can't hold that rating anymore, at which point you go very much slower. There is a curve for any given crew where they go steadily quicker with rating up until they can't keep it together anymore. They start shortening up and it falls off. The reason you go quicker with more rating is because your speed's more consistent. All right. Again, that little lump of theory is worth bearing in mind when you're being told off for the boat bouncing or any number of little technique things, because it's moving smoothly isn't just some subjective coaching ideal. It actually makes a difference to this force here, which is basically the only thing you're fighting against. It's flipping around slightly, but yeah, we were talking about muscles for suspension. It's the big ones across the back and the glutes. It's all about the hip extension. You will probably find Miloš has a lot of glute bridges and any number of other horrible things that test the posterior chain around there. Done. Yeah, I've sort of talked through this already, but if we're thinking about suspension, we don't just think about push with the legs and then rock with the body and then pull with the arms. It has to be one long, consistent push. And if you want the back of the stroke to have any power in it at all, you really have to think about driving those hips up. On the legs connect to hips, connect to arms. Hang on. Aha, this is the slide I was hoping we'd get to. You absolutely can suspend. You simply need to be able to stand up nice and sharply. If you're not doing millions of squats with Miloš, you will be doing quite shortly. And that's pretty much the action we're talking about. You want to be thinking about that stand up on the foot plate, that hang off the arms, every stroke you take. That doesn't automatically mean you have to be at super full pressure and hanging your backside off the seat. Particularly not if you've been told to take a tap. That's not necessary. But you need to be thinking about that drive up and off the seat right the way to the finish, even at light pressure. You want to be thinking about the muscles you're using and what you're trying to achieve out of the stroke. Push on the foot plate, lift up off the seat. If you just paddle along, you'll drop back into a bad habit pretty quickly. right back to Steve Fairbairn saying, take your best stroke every stroke. Take a bad stroke and you train yourself to take bad strokes. I should remember his exact quote. It was much better phrased than that. Anyway, important point. Anything else, any other muscle wants to relax. If you are just trying to stand up, you don't try to recruit your abs or hamstrings, anything else that does that. You want to be relaxed enough in the right places that you are just standing up on the foot plate every time. Just nice, relaxed, stand up. And recover on the recovery. Yeah, I mean, that comes in here. Switch off the muscles when you're not using them and you will recover. But the key is we want to make this sustainable. We want to make it natural. And that means you need to think about standing on the foot plate, lifting off the feet, off the seat. Whether you do that, legs then body, body then legs, whether you bend your arms or not, I don't much care. You're thinking about standing up. All right. So, sequencing, any questions on that? I've missed my opportunity to show the video. I will show the video anyway. All right, take you back to 2012. I'm just looking, there's not that many people here who would have been cheering for England in 2012, but anyway. Here we have significant rivalry going on here. The British team nearest to us, number 4 there is the Australians. Coxless 4, just coming through about 1,000 meters to go. The British, as I mentioned, we have a very legs then body style. If you watch these guys here, look at the little Adidas. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I don't think
I can't see. No, as ever, I have forgotten how to do screen sharing. Bear with. Thank you for telling me. Can you see a YouTube video? Yes, yes, cool. Right. In the near ground, we have the Brits, and we have Australia just coming into shot. The Brits, if you look at the little Adidas spot there and you look at his shoulder, you'll see shoulder doesn't come behind the hips until quite late in the stroke. Like so, boom. Obviously, he doesn't completely flatten his legs before he swings his back because we're talking about suspension here. Okay, it all has to be one long stroke, but he's doing it with more of a push on one, with a push on the legs, smoothly going into the back. You can sort of see the same thing from the number two here as well. Boom. I've automatically set this to quarter speed because they're rating about 38. We can't see it. Right. Interesting fact, in the races, they have one guy who's designated to look across at the other team and call tactics in the coxless boats. Everyone else, you look at the head in front of you and you wait for the guy calling tactics to tell you to put the power on. Anyway, the Australians in the background, you can see them. You can see the same sort of thing on them with their little sort of yellow tag on their shoulders. One of them's way more obvious about it than the others, and I can't remember which one. Let's watch. Almost right from the catch, the shoulders are coming back from the tab. Boom. Certainly when they're through half slide, they've already swung the bodies back a lot. Yeah, Bow's looking across. He knows he needs another seat yet. Boom, like so. Okay, so we have these two styles. Much more legs than body, much more concurrent, within half a seat of each other in the Olympic final. I'm willing to believe that neither of those is intrinsically better. And obviously the British style is better because we did win this race, but it was quite slow, quite close. Just skip ahead. There. Cool. So yeah, if anyone is overly keen on saying that this style is definitely better, this is usually the example that gets used. Okay. Oh. Hang on. Bear with me, I'm terrible with these things. Back to the sequence, back to the next debate. Just check someone's got. Yeah, we're all good. Okay, so we've covered a little bit about how we suspend, how we accelerate the boat. We talked a bit about drag as well. These are the objective. We know how these work. All right. Might as well talk about fast hands, slow hands for a bit, because this is a useful way to start talking about the drag on the boat. That thing that we really, really want to minimize as much as possible. So I'll just talk over it. So the key thing here is that if you're looking at the whole system of the boat, the crew, and the hull, it's nice and easy. It starts accelerating as you put some force in. You take the blades out of the water and it starts slowing down. Dead easy. The problem you have is that the crew slide up and down, and the crew weighs quite a lot more than the boat. As scullers, you're going to weigh 60, 70, 80 kilos. The boat will weigh no more than 20. When you rock forward and come up the slide, it's not really you coming up the slide. It's the boat coming down the slide. What that means for the speed of the boat in the water, and remember, that's the thing we're trying to keep as consistent as possible, the speed of the hull, not the speed of the rower, because you don't have any drag on the water unless something's gone very wrong. That means is if we're trying to keep the whole speed as smooth as possible, what we do on the recovery actually makes a difference. Potentially, if we keep speeding the boat up and slowing it and speeding it and slowing it on the recovery, we can add more drag than we need to. Equally, maybe what we do on the recovery can keep the whole speed as smooth as possible, and we can actually take less drag off the boat. All right. Remember, drag force is proportional to speed squared. If we really peak that speed, maybe we're not helping. So that leads into what I'm talking about, to the slow hands side of the argument. Really, if you let the boat run, let the speed decay, and then rock yourself, once it's slowed a bit, rock yourself forward, speed the boat up, your speed staying nice and constant, you get to the catch. Yeah. Also, you get that nice pause at the finish to let everything continue running. Yeah. Ignore that, it's a confusing mass of vertical lines. Counter argument. Really, so the center of your body, and this is a useful general point. The center of your body sits pretty much just above your belly button. If that's not moving, your center of mass isn't moving. So hands away does approximately nothing to the run of the boat. Body rock forward, unless you're doing massive amounts of lean back, it still doesn't make a major difference. It's when the knees lift that you really start to accelerate the boat. So the suggestion here is you really fling the hands away, rock forward and come forward more gently, and then you disturb the boat less. So it's quicker when you have fast hands, but it's also quicker when you have slow hands. All clear? Perfect. This is a direct quote from Tom Copeland. He does love long words. Nature very rarely has something where faster, faster, faster is always better, better, better. There's always a balancing act. And in practice, what I was talking about, the two arguments trade off against each other. Somewhere in the middle is usually best. Here's an interesting one for next time you're thinking about drills. If you want to go slow hands away and then speed into the catch, your catch needs to be very, very quick and very precise for that to work. If you want to spin your hands away like crazy and then glide gently up the slide, your finish needs to be very, very clean. If you want to play around with these, and again, you have the advantage in a single that you can try this, you will find out which is easier. You will probably find out which of the two ends of the stroke you're better at either. Okay. Also notable that as you speed up, you can't really pause and hang around at the finish. You're too busy trying to get forward. And you can't slide slowly because you're trying to get that rating high. So actually you end up with fast hands and a fast slide. Kind of averages itself out. Point 4, hands moving smoothly and continuously. Should have been kind of obvious. But Cantabs in particular has a habit of going fast hands, fast hands, fast hands, even if it's not necessarily what the crew would benefit from. It does mean, as per this, we do get nice fast rating when it comes to, and it does sort out our finishes. Doesn't necessarily let us put the run on the boat for the length of time that we're wanting. We don't necessarily let it run off the finish. I'm talking specifically about my crews here, but I think it kind of permeates the lower boats. Okay. So yeah, fast hands helps you finish, slow hands helps you on the slide. There's playing around with either is good, but ultimately you need to think about the first principles. We're trying to keep the speed of the hull nice and constant. We're trying to keep everyone nice and relaxed and everything balanced. It's become, you'll see a few crews around the river have a slight, it's a bit trendy at the moment, but they will tap down, pause just for a second, and then hands away. Effectively a little micro pause at backstops, which is a variant on the sort of slow hands. And it does just get the crew to sit there and pause and let the boat run before they fling their hands forwards. Obviously, they don't do that at race pace. Obviously, that gap, that little pause disappears as the rating starts to come up. But that's just an example of you can train one end, train at the other end. You can try it slow, fast. You can try it fast, slow. I actually had quite a lot of luck with my sculling with that. Just have a pause and then slide forwards. Hang on, I think this leads into something interesting. Oh yeah, it's talking about rating. Yeah, static ergs, much though they're wonderful for fitness, this fast hands, slow hands on the way forward, this is not a good thing to feel on a static erg. you can't tell whether what you're doing is working. Not that it's a big deal. Most of us don't have an erg to play on at the moment. But this is one of the cases where if you're playing around with what feels best on an erg, it is going to go totally wrong on the water. So, worth talking about rating. Hull speed, depending on the rating. If you're doing sort of low speed paddling, actually that rock forward doesn't give you much extra speed on the hull. So the nice pause at backstops and then rock forward is probably a good idea. As you start rating up, you start putting a little bit more speed on the hull as you rock forward. This is why I'll encourage you as scullers to start picking the rating up a little bit. It's all very relaxed if you paddle along at rate 16 and take a pause and look every so often, but you're not getting this feeling of rocking forward and bringing the boat up towards you. And that has a lot to do with control at higher rating, at how well you could, if you're thinking of racing, actually getting peak speed out of the boat. And it has a lot to do with moving together as a crew if you're in doubles, quads, eights, whatever. The key here, I don't normally talk crew stuff, but I will explain. The key when you're rocking forward is that you want to rock forward with as little force as possible. If you're having to fight your way up the slide, the crew is not moving together, and you're all going to arrive at front stops at different times and different speeds, and the catch is going to be horrible. You want to rock together, and then the boat just slides up underneath you. That's about the limit of my crew coaching right now. Yeah, as the rate steadily comes up, that rock forward becomes steadily more important. Getting that together is key to being able to hold the higher ratings, which means having some faster hands would be kind of useful at this point. At higher rating, your hands go fast and your slide goes fast. Okay. The key here is to minimize, oh, for goodness sake, minimize the magnitude of stretcher pull. With slightly less poncy words, you do not want to be yanking on the toe straps at any point. It wants to be a smooth pull to bring yourself forwards. Anytime you're pulling at that, you're upsetting the boat, you're bouncing it in the water. Remember, we said that that was a bad thing to be doing. And if you're in a crew boat, you're almost certainly out of time with everyone else. Right. What else have we got? I think we've got the catch. This is one I really like. Let me just remind myself why. Yeah, that's fine. This is one I really like in singles, because when you've got the confidence to get a correct catch, you're probably rowing pretty well already. It's the scary bit of the stroke. You know, front stops is where you're least balanced. It's where the boat is at its slowest. It's having the confidence to get this right is key. And you can see if you're on the bank or coaching whether someone's getting this right or not based on amount of splash. So what do we got? Yeah, boat here is traveling to the right. Blade is entering the water. And number 4 here is someone dropping the blade smoothly into the water so they don't disturb it at all. That's a neat trick. But if you are number 4, almost necessarily you have been moving the blade towards the stern, so forward. Otherwise, you'd be creating some splash. That's the way to disturb the water the least. But we like stroke length. We really like having long strokes. Actually, we will accept a little bit of backsplash, a little bit of water thrown towards the bows, if it means that you're getting that blade in the water really sharp and confident and you're ready to drive. Okay? You don't overdo it like number one. You don't want to actually catch the water before you're ready to catch. You don't want to hit the water before you're ready to catch. You don't want to deliberately try and soak the person behind you. Well, okay, sometimes you do. Sometimes it's funny. But you do want to be putting it in and not be afraid of a little bit of a kaplunk as the blade drops in. What you often find happens is number 5. People are both very nervous about lowering the blade in the water and very keen to get on the power. What gets referred to as rowing it in. You're starting to push before the blade's in. All right. Again, some coaches will be encouraging lots and lots of backsplash. Some will be encouraging dropping the blade in the water as smoothly as possible. Again, we need to understand the trade-off. The more water you throw up behind you, the more you're unsetting the boat. You're basically back. You know, number 1 is backing it down, let's be honest, or holding it up even. But the further we get towards 5, the less length we're getting, the less chance we are to get that blade in the water and connected. All right. So again, the best result tends to be in the middle. It's a little bit of splash just to show that you've had the confidence to chop that blade in and get it in there, but it's not masses. I was going to go into a little bit more detail than that, but never mind. Yeah, it's not worth going into the hydrodynamics of it. I think we've done enough. But there are numbers. Yeah. Talk through half of this. I'm annoying about that. If you could, you'd just cover the blade instantly. It'd go straight from touching the water to bam, in the water, and it'd look like number 4. But you can't. Depending how you you absolutely can film this in slow motion it and watch people gently lowering the blade into the water. Quite reliably, better crews go from blade touching the water to blade fully buried faster. It's a pretty good gauge of how good, technically good a crew is. And again, the gap here, 100ths of a second for Olympic crews, 1/4 of a second for club crews. There's a lot you can help there. Dum-dum. And yeah, the bottom paragraph is what I was saying. Stroke length is worth the trade-off. We will take a little bit of water thrown backwards in exchange for this extra 40 centimeters of boat movement. Yeah, using up useful stroke length. Really don't do that. We don't have enough of that ever. Even losing a few centimeters off it is worthwhile. I think I have one more. Oh yes. We do love to shout at our novices saying, keep your arms straight, keep your arms straight. Okay? And it becomes a mantra, and you end up with people with their elbows locked straight and their shoulders rolled forward, desperately pushing the handle as far away from them as they can to show the coach that they really have straight arms. And then you get to the top level and look at these guys. British pair, is that Triggs Hodge? Yeah, Andy Triggs Hodge in the 4. It's a top Norwegian. I should remember the name of the Czech sculler because he's one of the best in the world. Never mind. You will note particularly this chap to the left here. He's got quite a bend on the elbows. He would probably get shouted at by novice coaches on the cam for that. And you have to ask, why do we say straight arms, straight arms, straight arms? The answer is that you want to make sure you're using those big muscles. Remember one of the few points we all agree on? You want to drive with the big muscles of the legs and the glutes. If you start bending the elbows and pulling with the arms first, you probably can't transmit that power. What these guys are all doing here is only a little bit of a bend on the elbows. It's not much, but the muscles they're using to do that bend aren't the biceps. You can't actually see me on the camera. They're not bending it from the biceps. They're not sticking their elbows out. They're actually using the big muscles of the upper back to draw the shoulders back as well as the elbows. They're not bending the elbows. They're using the arms to transmit that power. They're hanging off the handle. We pretty much agreed that that was a good thing. And you can see pretty much all of these guys, you can just about see on through their kit, those big muscles stretching from the back, from the under the shoulder to the middle of the back. You can see them bulging. They're not messing around here. You can see it really well on the Czech Sculler. No, I can on my screen anyway. They are transmitting the power. Those elbows won't bend any further until they're done with the legs and the back. But right from the catch, they will have had that elbow bent, that muscle locked on, so that they're transmitting the legs and the force of the legs and the back. Okay.
Sorry, Davey. So you're saying that does it help does that little tiny bend in the elbow help kind of take away the temptation to roll your shoulder forward as well?
Yes, very much so. It's how best to phrase it. Yes, if you don't engage those big lateral muscles at all, and you drive, assuming your lower back is straight, then you're simply and you're hanging off that handle. What will happen is it pulls the shoulder forwards, and chances are it'll pull the shoulder up and forwards just because that's the way it naturally wants to hinge. Okay, you really don't want to do that because you are then pushing, but you're not yet hanging off the handle. You're only hanging off the handle when your shoulder won't stretch any further and the weight comes off the seat. So you need the whole body engaged right from the start. You need those lateral muscles engaged to pull the shoulder, not to pull the shoulder back, but to resist it being pulled forwards. If you're not sure about the muscles I'm talking about, because I keep pointing to them on me and chances are it's not going to come across on the screen. The trick is to reach one hand around sort of under your arm and hold your back, and then roll your shoulders down and back and try and poke your shoulder blades into your back pockets. You'll find that suddenly sits you up taller and you should feel the muscle that you're supposed to be engaging as you drive yourself back, as you sit yourself up.
Does it make a difference to your elbow joint as well? Because I'm just thinking if your arm's slightly bent, your elbow's more naturally pointing outwards rather than sometimes it. I mean, for me, it rotates sort of downwards a little bit more.
Yes, so you can see from the Norwegian guy on the left here, his elbows are kind of bending down. That's why it's obvious to us that he's doing it. The other guys, the bow rower and the pair, is very obviously pointing his elbow out towards us. I'm willing to believe these guys are engaging the right muscle no matter where they're pointing their elbow. But if you point your elbow down, it's more likely that you'll use the muscles lower in your back. If the elbow's up and the shoulder creeps up, it's likely that you'll try and use the muscle in the top of your shoulders, and you end up shrugging up. You ever see Sherwin in the boat? He's a nightmare for this. anyone with a lot of upper body strength will naturally try and shrug the shoulders up. We really want the shoulders coming down and back, sorts the posture out, and makes you transmit the power better. So yeah, this the Norwegian is doing what the senior women get coached to, which is dropping the elbow slightly to make sure the big lateral muscle engages. I'm relatively sure the pair are also engaging that muscle, but the elbow is angled slightly differently. Okay, so again, this is, we do say keep your arms straight. We can see at a very high level that maybe straight is not required to make the boat go fast, but now we understand why. That kind of bend that the Norwegian has got is not going to slow the boat down. It's not going to tire your arms out. And it may just engage the right muscles and help you transmit the power more effectively. I have a couple of fun exercises for engaging that muscle, which sadly require you to get closer than 2 meters. So maybe next season. Okay. There's not a lot of point talking about gearing because we can't really adjust them. Yeah, I will just say that you can adjust the length of the oars so that it's either light, it either feels light or heavy. You either have to rate higher with a light feeling or have big, heavy strokes with a heavy feeling. And you will have many arguments about what the correct gearing is. Should you be in a position to be adjusting your own gearing? The answer is it's what makes you go faster. Which by now should be pretty consistent. If bending your elbows slightly makes you go faster, bend your elbows. If driving hugely powerfully with the glutes right at the start of the stroke really works for you, you're in a single. It's not like anyone else's technique is going to clash with yours. Give it a try. Does that make sense? Have I completely lost everybody?
I was going to ask about rockover, just because I know that I've sort of noticed it in my own style before, is how much the sort of rock forward angle versus rock back angle makes a difference to speed.
So in keeping with the theme of the presentation, I'm not going to say that this is right and this is wrong. I'm just going to go over the trade-offs. Okay. So you can see these guys have all rocked forward. Oh, this Czech guy here has actually got a really good rock forward position. He's forward until his legs and core are nicely tucked together, but his back's still nice and straight. We refer to this as compression at the front of the stroke. Okay, we like stroke length. Stroke length is good. Further forward is a good thing, and he's about as far forward as he can get there without doing something catastrophic to his lower back. That is good. Okay, if you can't rock forward that far, you're giving up stroke length at the front end. If you can rock forward that far, but you do it by rounding your lower back, please don't do that. You are giving up vertebrae. If you find you don't have enough flexibility to do that, you fix it with flexibility, not hunching away at the front end. So the Czech chap here is quite conveniently demonstrating what rock forward gives you in terms of stroke length. Where was my demonstration on rock back? So yeah, rock back is not limited by flexibility as such. It might be limited by your physical ability to do a sit-up. Primarily the problem there, I'm sure I've got something useful on that. It's not so much the suspension side, never mind. Primarily there, the problem is getting back out of the position you're in. Okay, the further back you rock, the more you've got to pitch your body weight up and forwards to get away from backstops. remember, we said we don't like the boat bouncing up and down. If it bounces down at the finish, or it bounces down as you rock forward, you're making it deeper in the water. There's more, that is referred to as wetted surface area. You've got more drag. None of this is great. Okay. The Canadians, in fact, back in the 1980s, tried a style where they laid right back in the boat. They had ridiculously long stroke length, but they had a big rock forward needed. Huge, must have had enormous ab muscles, but every time they rocked up and forward, they rocked the boat down. That style did not catch on by pretty much anyone else, and the Canadians stopped doing it as well. So again, it's a trade-off. The more you rock back, the more length you get, the more use you get out of those big, powerful hip muscles, but the more you're going to have to work to pick yourself back up again, so you're limited on rating, and the more risk you have of doofing the bow of the boat down in the water as you sit up. Suitable trade-offs?
I've also found whenever I lean back too far, I fly off. So I don't get a connection on my feet anymore. So if I try that on the erg, then feet out, then I just go flying.
Yes.
So I need to not go back too far because my core can't handle it. So either not rock back too far or increase my core.
Yeah. So yeah, no matter how strong your core, you still can't not doof the boat back down in the water.
No, sure, but I think that's just like an added thing.
Indeed.
Maybe.
Yeah. And you will see if the sort of the indoor rowing championships and the like, they lean back a lot. They don't have, ergs don't bounce up and down. They want stroke length at almost all costs. So they will be lent back twice as far as you would on water.
And sure, it's like if your feet are strapped in, then of course, great. But in a boat, then your heels just fly off. And so if you're only like touching the tippy toes, because your shoes, your feet are in the shoes, and then you're not connecting with the boat anymore.
Yeah.
So you can't push it anymore, right?
Yeah. So if you want a useful way to gauge how far back is starting to push the boat down, the simple way to think about it is if you're having to pull up on the toes to bring yourself forward, you're pulling the boat, you're pulling yourself up by the toes, you're rotating the boat, you're diving the nose of the boat down. So if you stop at backstops, have that little pause, and then just tell whether you're having to catch yourself on the toes or not, that'll give you a clue how far back you're leaning. Obviously, as you start rating up and there's more momentum involved, you'll have to pull yourself up. But if you pause, sit there and go, if someone pulled my feet out right now, would I fall over backwards? That tells you how close you are to unsetting the boat. Again, it's a trade-off. You may, particularly if you're the short, stumpy one in a crew, you may decide you'd rather have a bit more lean back to keep your stroke lengths equal with anyone else. That's another trade-off to make. But yes, if you're falling over backwards without the shoes, you're dropping the boat down with the shoes.
Yeah.
Common sense. Cool. Any other questions on any of that? Silence. Okay. So I hope that's given you a couple of the trade-offs that get made, a couple of the reasons different people make different trade-offs, and a bit of an understanding of why I shout some of the things I shout. I'm conscious that I do a lot of these things. I will tell you to do a lot of them, but we don't really sit down and talk about the whys and the theory behind it. And it can make a lot of difference to understand that later. Everybody happy? Cool. Recording will be up on YouTube as ever once I'm done with it. Thanks everyone for coming.
Yeah, really good. Thanks, Dave.
Sorry, Dave, I had to rush off. I think we might have a bit of a water leak.
Oh dear.
Oh dear,
yeah,
exactly. So I'll go now.
Yep, that is fine. You are welcome to catch up on the recording later, but
Okay,
yes,
thanks.
do save your carpets.
Thanks.
Cool. Right. Right. I am just trying to sort out the recording stuff.